Hi, welcome to the Success NPs Podcast. I am your host, Sandra, and we are talking with Tesiah Coleman. She is the founder and CEO of Togather, and she is a proud nurse practitioner, doula, lactation counselor, and her background spans community health to health tech leadership and product development, which is so cool. And no matter what role she approaches, she uses her principles of ALI, which include anti-racism, liberation, and intersectionality. She's on a mission to support and connect and educate healthcare providers working towards health justice. And she came onto the podcast to talk about all that she's doing with Togather, her business. And she's also going to talk a little bit about giving NPs the tools they need to cultivate resiliency. Thank you for coming on, and thanks for sharing your wisdom with us.
Excited to be here.
Thanks
for having me.
Yes, me as well. So tell us a little about what it is that you're doing right now with your career.
Yes. Okay. So I'm doing a little bit of everything right now, which is, I feel like, a very common nurse theme. Even when we're just in one particular role, we're doing a little bit of everything. So right now, I'm building Togather, and I kind of, I guess, fancy myself a community architect right now. That's what I'm doing. I'm trying to build community amongst healthcare providers. I mean, as you know, we're burnt out, we're tired, we're feeling very frustrated by the systemic inequities and issues that we're seeing. And I just want to bring a little bit more like joy and connection to the work that we do. And so that's what I'm doing right now with Togather. And it's an exciting time. And it's my first time founding a company or building a business. And so all of the bumps and bruises and triumphs that go along with that.
So if I could ask you, if you could see Togather and what it would build, if you saw it built out 5 years from now, what does it look like? What is it doing?
Yeah. So we're a thriving community, both in virtually, but also in person with, I think, more like local chapters. We're having annual conferences, but not the usual conferences when you're like stale bagels day long, like you're tired, you're not being able to connect with people, but actual like connection with your healthcare peers that really allows you to feel like a sense of camaraderie with folks and to learn from each other. And I always see everything interdisciplinary. I don't believe in like the silos of care that we have. It's not good for patients. It's not good for providers. And so I see these interdisciplinary, just really wonderful conferences coming together. I mean, we do so many things at Togather, and I just see all of those continuing to evolve and really bridge a lot of the gaps we're seeing in the healthcare system.
Oh, that's so cool. So take me to how you got to this spot where now in your career, you're like starting your own business, starting something that is not really even really patient-centered per se. It's more focused on the healthcare professionals. How did you get to this spot? Like, take me through your journey and how you became a nurse and then a lactation consultant and all these different things that you've been adding to your repertoire.
Yeah. So it's a bit of a windy road, but I did not ever think of nursing as a possible field for me. It wasn't even on my radar. I was in undergrad and I actually had my son, Oliver, who's now 10. And I got pregnant with Oliver. I knew I wanted to breastfeed and then found accessing care to be super tricky. There was a lot of like assumptions made about me and whether I would breastfeed or not and what that looked like being like a young Black mother. And so I decided like, whatever, I'm going to do this. I did it. And I also was like, I feel like people need to like have people that look like me be in this field. And so I actually became a lactation counselor first. Then I became a doula. And then I was working at this home for women with substance use disorder or mental health co-occurring diagnosis. And they lived there with their babies or they're pregnant and they needed people to support them during their labor and delivery. And so that got me started in the doula world. I met a nurse. She was really inspiring to me. And I was like, okay, this is what I'm doing. And that rolled me right into applying for grad school, becoming a nurse, working with prenatal education, all of that field. And then once I became a nurse practitioner, I moved into providing prenatal care in a community setting.
Oh, that is such a cool journey. And so your son, Oliver, is 10 and I feel like our children are such the inspiration for so many things. I mean, like starting the podcast was because of my kid. I mean, it's so neat. And it is true. Like if you don't know how to advocate for yourself with breastfeeding, you very quickly can be ignored or just feel like you can't do it. And you've got to be a little more proactive. And if you don't have that modeled out for you, or you're not somebody in the healthcare field, then you kind of don't know what to ask. And so you just think like, this isn't for me, and you give up. But like, again, kind of that dogged spirit that we were talking about earlier, like, I'm just not going to give up. Like, I'm going to just,
and by you saying I can't do it, now I'm going to do it even more. But like, that is not it. Yeah.
I'm sure.
Very much my vibe.
Now, like, you've made it like challenge accepted. Like, that's all you've done. It's just maybe more.
Exactly.
Good for you.
Yeah.
So you decide, okay, you get into women's health. And then where did your women's health career kind of take you to where you started going into what you were talking about, working in leadership, tech leadership, product development? Kind of how did you get into that space?
Yes. I like fell kind of face first into that space. So it brought me to a place I really wasn't expecting. I got into becoming an NP to work in community healthcare. That was like what I wanted to do. I wanted to be like where the people were. I wanted to support. I wanted to really go where I felt like there were huge gaps in our system. And that's what I started when I went into community healthcare. The thing about community health is, I mean, across healthcare, we're getting burnt out. Community health is like a next level of burnout. And we're throwing new grads into these environments where we're seeing the most vulnerable patients, really complex care, and we're not giving the clinics the resources they need and not giving the providers the resources they need. So that was me right out of school. I was in that environment, still really bright-eyed, like, I want to do this, so excited, really that passion and spirit that I want to reignite for people later in their careers now, but still had that. And then it started to fizzle. And then the pandemic. And it was like, yeah. Exactly. And so actually, again, my son inspired me. So my son, this is October 2020 now.
Okay.
And my son's leg is hurting and I bring him to the hospital. And the next thing I know, he's diagnosed with leukemia. And we're spending 2 weeks in the hospital getting all the things you need when you're diagnosed with leukemia. And I call my work and I say, listen, this is what happened. My son has cancer. Like, I don't know what this is going to look like, but I do know that I can't come into the clinic. Like, I can't expose him to COVID. I can't expose him to anything at this point. Like, we're getting his immune system all the way down to 0. And I was told, sorry, like, you have to come in. You have to come in. Like, I know we're doing telehealth, but you can't do that from home. You need to do it from the office so that we know that you're working. And I was like, what?
Wow.
Like, be serious. And I was like, you really think that I'm going to take, and we know how community NPs are paid. You're like, you really think I'm going to take this, that I'm going to take anything over being completely committed in here for my son? Like, I'm just not. And I love my patients, but there's no comparison to what my responsibilities are and my dedication is to my son. And so that threw me a little bit. I'm a planner, a little type A. I like to, little overachiever. I think there's a lot of that in the nursing field. And it was scary to take the leap. But I was like, there's no way that I'm going to compromise my family. And so I literally applied to one job. That was it. I applied to one job. I found the health tech company I fell in love with. I researched them. I applied. And then within 2 weeks, I was hired. And that led me down an entire different path of my career that I'm actually like so grateful of now. And it's these, these twists and turns that surprise you, but lead you to better places. And Oliver's healthy now.
I was just going to ask, how is Oliver? Yeah. That was what I was waiting for.
Oliver's fantastic. I mean, we are a year and a half. He did treatment for about 3 years. We're like a year and a half-ish out from treatment, from any chemo. He's in remission. He's doing wonderfully.
Gosh.
Yeah.
So just his leg hurting was the only indicator that you had that something was up.
Really the only indicator. Yeah.
That is insane.
And I only brought him to the hospital because it was a Sunday. Because I wouldn't usually bring that, and it was a Sunday and I couldn't access care and he was like limping. And I was like, this isn't right. And so I brought, but he does gymnastics. So I was like, oh, like you probably just pulled something, but like, let's be sure. And I brought him into the hospital and then we did leave for 2 weeks.
Oh my gosh. And then the audacity is that you're working to not get behind and rally. And I'm assuming, are you a single mom?
So I have a partner and Oliver's dad is was a great support during it, but he was also working his own job. And like, that wasn't the, like, so it was a lot to manage through.
Okay. So you did have some support, but regardless, you're a mom, that's your baby. You want to be able to step away for a period of time to focus in on first things first. And I think sometimes what healthcare assumes is that we're going to take the things in our lives that are number ones and put them before that. And it's like, that's not how this works. And it's good to hear that you had support, because that would just be absolutely insane to be doing by yourself and having to work and take care of.
It's insane for couples. It's insane for families. I mean, you really need a whole village in a situation. You need a whole village baseline for parenting. And then you definitely need a whole village if you have a situation like this. And the problem was, it was COVID. We didn't have our village. I mean, we live in Berkeley, California, but we're from Cape Cod, Massachusetts. So we're across the country. So, it was an isolating time. And I think actually, probably part of what informed what I'm doing now with Togather was joining this parents of leukemia, like kids with leukemia support group. And I joined this, it was just literally a Facebook group. It was like completely low key, but it was incredible. I mean, I learned things there medically that I never learned in NP school. Like all these little tips and tricks of like knowledge sharing just between people who had shared experiences is such a powerful tool. And that is a huge part of Togather, is the knowledge sharing aspect between clinicians.
That makes a lot of sense. Just connecting that to what you see, kind of what healthcare professionals need, right? And that throes of working in community or just working, even at just hospital jobs, any job that you're working, you do need support. And I think that is just so profound, what inspired it, and then how you're able to kind of connect these two things. You kind of building something out of pain and something that was super hard. I just find that so inspirational. So
thank you.
I think that's just incredible. So that's how you get involved in health and tech, and you're, again, inspiring all of it. Our children inspire us mamas.
Which he reminds me frequently. I'm like, you're welcome. Yeah. So when I started at the first health tech company I worked for, it was really I was supposed to just do patient care. That was what I was hired for, which is patient care. I am not capable of like keeping my mouth shut. That is just who I am. And so anytime I see something wrong or something that could be better, even not even like wrong, but could be improved, I'm like, yep, we got to do something about that and this. And then I'm like, and here are all my thoughts of how to do that. And so I really just, which I've done in any job, and some jobs appreciate it and some jobs do not. And this job appreciated it. And so within 6 months, I started building out their virtual care team. I created the first manager of virtual care role, and then director of virtual care role, and then ended up being their director of clinical services, quality. And I just kind of kept like building and kept connecting with clinicians. And we had a mixed team of NPs and MD. So I was the 5th virtual care provider. And by the time I left, I had collaborated on building the team to about 45 providers. And so we were started in 1 state, ended up being in 3 states. And it was I just learned so much in that role. And learned so much that like they don't tell you in nursing school, that you can do all these other things, that it's not just one path.
No, that's 100% like my shtick. Like, because it's so interesting. You go to school and you get told you have all these options. And then you leave school and you think your only option's the hospital. It's like, where did all these dreams go? Like, where did all these options just vanish? And so when kind of like in a situation where I was, when I had my son, he was in the NICU, we had this like really traumatic birth. And then I have to go back to work at like 3 or 4 months. I'm still healing from like a C-section, but I've got to go back full time because they won't allow me to come back in any other capacity. And I don't get to see my kid. I mean, I literally was working 6 a.m, 5 o'clock at night, 2 hours before he went to bed. 2 hours, I see my kid. Like, are you kidding me? And so as I began to look at this, I was like, okay, so I'm going to go back and be an RN because I at least can work 1 day a week, make a little bit of something. And I have the whole week to be with my kid. Like, I would rather go without than to do this life. This is life. This is living. Who's living like this? And I remember Tony Robbins made a statement one time, and I thought it was so interesting. He's like, if you don't even have 5 minutes for yourself, what life are you living? And it was such a good question that I was like, wait a minute. Yeah, like, why am I choosing this? Like, kind of like you were like, yeah, I'm not doing that. Like, I'm just going to go. Like, please challenge me. Please let me in so that I could go figure it out.
It was hard to make that decision, even being as stubborn as I am. It was hard to make that decision because it's like beaten into us that of this like loyalty and this also almost like martyrdom for the clinic, like for the success of the clinic, which they kind of twist and twine into the success and health of patients, which they're not the same thing. And I think that's the thing that clinicians are starting to wake up to, is that like, this is failing patients. This is failing us. Like this system is not benefiting any of us. And so why am I going to just keep grinding in it, hurting myself?
Yes.
Like that doesn't serve my patient and it doesn't serve me.
I agree. And you know what is so interesting? I work 2 days a week, and I will tell you something. I have patients thank me more than I ever was thanked as a 4-day or 5-day a week NP working 40 hours a week. And I have them thank me more. And you know what? Other NPs and other people that I work with respect my decision more because they know, like, Sandra made the right call for her, and all of us need to just get behind it. Now, again, you're going to meet people that are going to put you down for it. And I even talk about that on other podcast episodes where I've said, like, I had to endure a level of just resistance with just breaking through the mold, right? Like, anytime you break the mold, you're going to meet a resistance. But I'm the only nurse practitioner that went part-time there. And now other NPs are like, can I do it? Like, you've got to be the one. Someone's got to be the one to just be like, this doesn't work for everybody. And then people are like, yeah, it's not working for me either. Like, this system is bad. And so my patients actually thank me because they realize if I didn't show up at all, it'd be one last provider. So it's at least good that she's doing what's good for her.
Like, or if you showed up after 40 hours a week and you're completely compassion fatigued, you're burnt out, you're resentful of your patients. And then what we're doing is we're perpetuating trauma, we're receiving trauma. And it's just this trauma cycle where it's like, that doesn't serve patients.
Agree. So it's almost like you want better care. Let people put first things first, especially moms, especially during this time when they're supposed to be, I'm sorry, we're seasonal. Women are seasonal. We're seasonal within the month, right? Like literally within a month, our hormones do something seasonal. And so here we are in a woman-dominated field. And yet when women try to create careers that meet them in the season of, I have a sick kid, or meet me in the season of here or there, where it's like, listen, I don't feel like that's life for me. I don't feel like that's living. I want to be more present. Then, in my opinion, in order to promote better patient care, to have retention of good talent, why not create these opportunities for part-time or different tech jobs, or putting us in different situations where it's like, this actually works a little better for my personality, what I'm good at. I kind of like to push the mold. I kind of like to see what's different. And we need to start being open to like, all right, we need all kinds, different strokes for different folks, you know? And so let's just embrace it. I don't know.
And we actually, I think as nurses, what led me to nursing specifically was it meshed really well with my like health justice, social justice focus, because nursing actually has, I mean, we have a lot of issues to work through, but we have this like really activist spirit, these roots in pushing boundaries, because people didn't want nurses to exist as they exist today. Like, we have gotten to this point and we've gotten what power we do have through pushing and breaking through the mold like you're talking about. But I think we've lost some of that. I mean, you know, we kind of all, or many of us, roll our eyes at that like history of nursing class in school because we're like, I just want to learn the practical pieces, right? But it's like some of that is so important to understand. Like, we are change makers. Nurses are change makers. So like, what is it that you want changed? And, you know, for Togather, like, that's what we talk about is like, find your cause. What do you want changed? And then find your people, because you're not going to get any traction on that cause, or you're going to burn yourself out trying to change it if you don't find your people. And so how do we have that balance?
I love that. And so you go from healthcare, health tech, to now Togather. And you are now creating this, which tell my audience a little bit about what you're creating. And I think at this point they probably know, but again, just really break down like what it is you're trying to build. It's so cool.
Yeah. So we are trying to build at this point. There's like a we, which is really exciting because you start to do something yourself. And it's like, I knew from the beginning this needed to be a collective effort. So what it is we're calling it the collective care platform for health justice. So really what that means is, the idea behind collective care is that all of our well-being is tied together. And we see this all the time. Like, even if you look at like longevity research, we know that like being in community actually helps you live longer and actually improves your health.
Yeah.
And so when we think about collective care, it's just acknowledging that fact that it's like a rising tide, like lifts all boats type of thing. It's like, if we can do better together, we're going to do better and everyone's going to benefit. And so how do we bring the change makers from across the healthcare ecosystem to a space together where they can be rallied around? So I think of Togather as like if we're thinking about a marathon, you need like a marathon trainer, right? Someone to get you ready. So Togather has CE courses. We're CE accredited completely for nurses. And so we have all these education courses to teach nurses and other healthcare professionals how to engage in this changemaker work. Then also, if you're running a marathon, though, you need like the cheering people on the sidelines that are helping you like keep your energy up. And so we have all of these community forums. We have an app. You can just jump in and ask questions, connect with other providers. We have virtual meetup. So we have like everything from breathwork classes to course connects where you can just jump in and talk about the things you're learning to we have an amazing doctor of traditional Chinese medicine that does a kind of acupressure TCM like course connect for people. So we have a lot of different offerings to just kind of keep you moving. And then also what marathon runners have are those people who share the little like orange wedges and like little waters and stuff on the side. Yeah. So I think of that and it's like, so we have this one channel in the platform that's literally just called Joy. And we just all throw everything in there that brings us joy. And instead of like doom scrolling at night before you go to sleep, you can like joy scroll and you can just get kind of hit with some of those warm, fuzzy endorphins to help you like get through the marathon that is trying to change the healthcare system.
Cool.
So that's what we're doing. We're shifting a little bit every day because we're really working to create a space that meets the needs of the community that we have. And so as more community members come in, we add more events, we add more offerings, that sort of thing.
So cool.
Yeah.
And so I also know that you're writing a column from the nursing beat, I think, as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what are you writing for that?
Yeah. So it's called Caring Collectively with Togather. And it's all about how nurses can engage in changing things, how we can push back against health inequities, how health inequities even affect us and patients. And I think that that's kind of a misconception sometimes is we'll be like, oh, well, like health inequities is just talking about, let's say, Black maternal health, or it's just talking about something that's focused on patients and something that's focused on some kind of minoritized or vulnerable population, right?
Yeah.
But that's not true. Like health inequities harm every single person. The way the system is set up harms every single person. Liberation or freedom or us having living the way we want is about supporting everyone. And so how do we focus on the people who aren't being supported now to help lift everyone up? And so that's really what Caring Collectively is about. And it's about the fact that like the system is harming patients and providers. So let's not just talk about patient outcomes. Let's also talk about provider well-being because that affects patient outcomes.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things I had on another podcast was I had a lady come on. I can't remember her name. She's super sweet. And she talked a little bit she came on and talked about nursing sabbaticals and how nurses should take sabbaticals from their job and how like other caring professions like pastors and there was another group of professions of people that care for people that they take like time away where they're just like, listen, I have to care so long that I just need to take a break. And so it is a system issue, right? Like what we do is so different than most jobs, right? And whenever you realize like that care aspect is literally coming from a part of your soul that has to get filled up, it has to be, replenished because you just have to pour so much. I think it is so wise that you have all these little spots and these little things in your collective that you're encouraging the healthcare providers to stay nourished and to stay full. And again, that's something that I've just found, fortunately for me, being that provider means I work in a part-time capacity because it's just, I can't do that full time. I can't be that person and give and to take care of my children and my children, as I tell my patients, I like you a lot. I just like them a heck of a whole lot more. And so that works like me prioritizing them when they're little, especially in this time where I'm a, primary job as a mom. And so I think that's really great. And I think you brought up something that kind of leads us into the thing I really wanted to talk with you about as well today was how nurse practitioners can cultivate that resilience in their careers. What were you finding that lasting joy that really does keep them inspired as you've been kind of growing out this community?
Yeah. So I actually find, one thing I wanted to say about the sabbatical thing before I go into that is that I met a nurse, an ICU nurse in Spain, because all last year we traveled, we world schooled. And so last year I was in Spain for
You world schooled your kid? You world schooled your son? Yes.
Yeah. So we were in Barcelona and I met this ICU nurse and we had dinner and she was on a 2-year, she was currently on a 2-year sabbatical in which she was actually getting paid to take courses around like digital health or something. And like, I was blown away. I was blown away. Yes. Why not here? So anyways, just going to leave that there. Why not here?
Love that. Love that.
To answer your question, I truly believe in like the healing power of advocacy. And I think usually when people think about advocacy, we think about it in, again, this kind of martyr way in which we're working ourselves to the bone. We're spending hours and hours on the phone, maybe with the pharmacist, trying to get the right medication for our patient, or we're fighting tooth and nail with a boss, trying to get policy change. That's what people go to when they think about advocacy. But that is not what advocacy has to be. There are sustainable ways to approach advocacy. Advocacy can be laughing in community, and it can be sharing little tips and tricks so that we're not reinventing the wheel and so that we pass that along to our patients. It can be forming the most amazing connection with our patients and really listening to them is advocacy. And that work is so important, and teaching them like, okay, we know the system's broken. Here are a few tips that I know that I'm going to share with you on how to like navigate this wild thing that is happening right now. Yes. Like just leveling with them and being human, all of that is advocacy work. And I think that like, when you're able to tap back into your passion, connect to purpose, that's another thing that we know is connected to longevity, is having a purpose. And so when you connect into your purpose, then you are so much happier. And so like we're kind of equating a lot of this like justice work with like harm, with negativity, with having to constantly just be in the mix of negativity. And that's not true. It's hard, right? The life is hard, but there can be so much joy found in that advocacy work. And I think that is what the resilience piece needs, is the permissioning of self to find joy, because that's a big part of it. One thing is just like nurses will be like, no, I can't do that. Like I have to do it this way. And it's like, no. So first, permission yourself to find joy. I find that especially true with nurses from any kind of minoritized group as well. So it's like obviously we're majority women, especially if you layer on any other thing of like LGBTQ community, BIPOC community, you layer on those identities and it's like becomes even harder to get people to tap into like, it's okay to relax. It's okay to say no. It's okay to take a breath and center yourself for once. And so I think that being able to say that advocacy or practice advocacy in which it's coming from an overflowing cup versus just like pouring ourselves out again and again and again until we're completely dried up and then like trying to like real quick like chug a bunch of water to get us ourselves full to like pour ourselves out again. That's not going to be the kind of advocacy that we need to truly change the like massive changes that need to happen in our system. Like it's not sustainable.
Yeah. I think, I have a couple of thoughts. One of which is up through my lens, which I am Christian, and it's important to kind of put it through that lens. When you think of the word joy, I love the acronym Jesus, others, yourself, which doesn't really most people don't think that way of joy. They don't think, they think I have to think about myself more. And sometimes what that really isn't what brings you that much more joy, is if we fixate more on ourselves. But if we fixate, kind of like what you were saying, on purpose, what does it look like to really connect to what it is you are meant to do? And then through that, which again, for me, that's my faith, putting first things first, Jesus, others. So for me, that's finding joy in the relationships that I have,
Yeah.
the cultivating those things, and then focusing less on myself, focusing less on I'm unhappy, well, I'm not. It's like, no. Let's connect back to purpose. Let's connect back to what I'm supposed to be doing. What am I here on this earth to provide and to bring? And then if I focus in on others, I focus in on my children, my husband, like the things that I have that are just beyond a number, numerical number valuable, that brings joy. And then again, putting myself in that last position and thinking of myself last, what is it that I find joyful? What are the things that I, deem these things from that just are put in me? I like to draw. I like to color. And I have so many nurse practitioners and nurses on my podcast that say there were the quiet moments. What do you mean quiet moments? I had surgery. I was having to lay down because I was sick. I was put out for COVID. I didn't have a job. So I sat alone. And in those quiet moments, your soul whispers something from inside comes up. I almost get goosebumps talking about it because it is almost like a quiet soul whisper of, this is what you enjoy. And so they doodled and they had doodled and they fell asleep and the doodle got left up and their husband posted it and the thing went viral. And that's what sold 1,000 copies. And they were like, I didn't even know that this was something. And so I'm serious. I have so many episodes with nurses that are describing that exact situation of that's how they were able to find joy. That's how they were able to escape whatever it was that they were doing at their job that just was just draining them. And so again, just putting that, I think, in that way and in that focus, I just think is so wise. And again, everyone's different, but that's just for me. And I think that it's just really helpful to be able to, again, go back to that word joy and break that word down for you and how that looks. I just think that's so good.
And I mean, your point of like how to have those pauses that allow us to listen to ourselves and listen to that inner voice. Like for me, I was laid off from a position back like a year and a half ago or something during the big tech layoffs. I was laid off. Being laid off is a soul crushing experience. I mean, it's so difficult for anyone. Even if it's like very clear it's not about you, it feels personal. But being laid off, I mean, I'm a goer. I'm go. Being laid off was the first time in years that I stopped. And that is really where Togather flourished. Like that is where I had my best ideas for what Togather was going to be, was when I was forced, like you're saying, like with the surgery, when I was forced to stop. And then I just started listening to that inner voice.
Yeah. And I was thinking as you were talking, like there had to be so much that came up during that time. I get emotional about it because there had to be so much that came up during that time after dealing with like what you had to deal with your son. And then to just be so busy. Like if I know you and I know you and I feel like I do, and nurses just in general, we will work ourselves to the point of exhaustion. And I can't imagine on top of that, having a baby. My baby is sick on top of all of this.
It was so much.
Having to navigate. And then you kind of get this reprieve, even though you don't think it in the time. In the moment, you think this is literally the worst thing ever. That like I'm having to not have my job. Like I'm going to be in this financially insecure place. And then you end up going, no, it was a blessing. Like it was such a blessing to be able to just go, slow down, like process. And what comes up, like, what is it that just like comes up out of that dark space? I just think that is so profound and so neat. And I don't know why I saw that, but I just saw that. I just felt like, that I could see that for you. Yeah.
I mean, I really appreciate that because I really think like parents navigating cancer with their kids, like they're some of the most incredible people I've met. I mean, it's just like a different level of onness, right? Because it's like you might be on for work, but then it's like you go home and maybe you're like on for bedtime or whatever. But then it's like, I'm also there being like, okay, what his count's going to be? Like, what is this medication going to have a side effect of? Is he in pain? Does he have the right medication? It's just you're constantly going and you're constantly in that. I think also for like medical providers or healthcare providers who have kids going through that or dealing with chronic illnesses, it's like you're always immersed in the medicine too. You're always immersed in the health part of it. And I think, that can be really difficult to have that be your whole world all the time. And so it feels really, honestly, healing for me to be able to be building Togather right now and be taking a different approach to doing the work I love, which is, the work I love is addressing health inequities. To be able to do that in this really kind of like positive channel in this different way it feels amazing.
Yeah. It feels like life purpose stuff, right? The stuff that you feel like is going to leave a lasting difference in the area that you work in. It's so cool. So cool.
Yes.
And so how does a resilient nurse practitioner affect change in his or her workplace, right? So kind of, we talked a little bit about like pushing back in the area that we work in, but like, how does one do it? How does one do it successfully? And kind of, what are the tools that you would recommend for a nurse practitioner that's like, all right, I see some things that I want to change, but the system's broken. So what are the tools that you've noticed that you help other NPs navigate that space?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the first thing I always say is to like resource yourself. And that means lots of different things, I'll explain, but like to resource yourself. So if you're going into, let's say, a difficult conversation and you notice something's wrong in whatever clinical space you're working in and you want to change something, and if you're going into a conversation or you're sending an email even in a time of low resource, so a time of anger is a time where we're not very well resourced, or a time of we didn't eat, or you don't know a lot about the subject, you literally just haven't researched it enough. Like if we're low resourced in kind of any areas, it's not going to be as productive as if we first resource ourselves. And so that is kind of the approach I take a lot with Togather. What are all the resources a provider would need to collect in order to create change? And so I think that identifying for yourself, what is it? I mean, kind of cliche, but what is your toolbox of advocacy? Like my toolbox of advocacy for emotional regulation is this friend that I love, and we have movie nights together, and I go over her house once a week and we just watch a movie, and that helps to resource me to have space away so that I can do advocacy work. Or my resource for even like this clinical topic area is this provider, and I just text them when I'm confused about this thing and they help to resource me in that way. Like just find what your resources are, and maybe it's a community forum, maybe it's just a group chat that you create yourself, right? So like I think there's so many different ways that they can resource themselves, but I would say resource yourself first, because if you're again trying to enact change from an empty cup, it's not going to work as well. And then start to kind of map out of what's your ultimate outcome. Because I think that's the other thing is like, if you're setting out to, let's say, change a policy at the work that you're at, but what you're really doing is that you just hate your job and you don't want to work there at all and you want to work somewhere else, and you're just trying to like fix the place that you're at because you like can't stand what they're doing, maybe actually what you just need to focus on is leaving the place, not fixing the place. But if you're like, I love this place, there's so many things I love about this job, I just wish that we did this differently, then great. Then work to fix that thing.
So
but really get real with yourself about what it is you're trying, what is the outcome that you want from the situation.
Yes. No, you're so right. Burnout what do they say? Burnout is from you're doing not enough of what you love. And so like that's how you get burned out. There's going to be elements of a job that you don't like in every job, right? Like
every single
just like
one.
in every, marriage, you go, people go looking for the right partner. Everyone's got a problem. So like, good luck. You're going to go from one person to another. That's a problem. Like you're going to have to deal with something with everyone, right? And it's kind of the same with job. And there's going to be elements of a job that are better than others. And you might be a better fit. Kind of like I fit here better based on my personality. Like you said, I was in this tech position and they loved that I was like, no, this doesn't work.
Yeah.
I'm going to fix it. And then
community help love that. Yeah.
Like you're annoying. So you just fit, right? You're a square peg in a round hole. Like, and so when you go find that spot where they're like, no, we love the way that you are. In fact, the way that you are, we're going to like flourish that. And it's going to just be this gasoline on a fire that's just going to take off. That's great. And again, you find that also in relationships, right? Like you're in relationships with people and you're just like, it's just less work here. Like, why wouldn't I choose this one? This one's easiest, So I think that what you're saying is so true. And so as you are aware of the fact that, yes, every job's going to have problems, what is it that you're running towards? Like, are you running away from something? Or are we running towards something? And when you're running away from something, it may be that you just need to run towards another job because it's just not the right fit,
And I think like, I kind of work with folks who are all over the spectrum of like access to that, right? So it's like, it could be some seasons, right? Like some seasons in our lives, you do have to just work the shitty job. Like there's no way to maneuver past that job. And so then it's like getting real about what are the things we're going to put in place for you so you can do this in a way that respects and hold on to your dignity as much as possible before we can make a transition. And I think also that like, that's why I have zero judgment for any healthcare provider at any point of any choice you have to make about your career and what you have to deal with in order to like make it through this really crap system. Like it's awful. And so like, if you decide that you need to work that awful job for the next 3 years, like we're going to get you through that. And we're going to make sure we support you as much as possible. If you decide you need to leave that job tomorrow, then we're going to get you through that. And we're going to support you as much as possible because there are ups and downs. I mean, you know this, I'm sure, with creating your business, like even though I know that I'm perfectly on purpose right now, it doesn't mean that like lots of days I don't start to get little doubts and be like, oh my gosh, like good enough to do that. Are you sure people want this? Are you sure? Like, are you even making sense? Like, all of those little things come in. And so like, I just have built out support and I don't always have the built out. And then I have to scramble after I deal with it to be like, okay, now we're going to fill this gap. Cause like that was a mess. And so, so I just think that like meeting people, like truly meeting people where they're at. I know again, like cliche, but we have to meet ourselves where we're at. And we need to meet other healthcare providers where they're at, not just patients, but we also need to meet patients where they're at.
Yeah. And speaking of patients, what have you noticed as you build up these systems and you encourage nurse practitioners to have community, to have those opportunities for advocacy, to find the resources that they need? What does that mean for patients? I mean, right? Because this is what the whole system is built on, is we're supposed to be caring for people. What do you see?
Patients, like, so actually I have, there's a person that focuses on research at Togather. And so they're actually trying right now to figure out how to measure that in a more kind of like quantitative way. Like, how do we measure the impact that we're having on providers? But then also, how do we measure the impact we're having on patients? Because we are having an impact. I mean, just anecdotally, like connecting with providers who have community, whether that community is Togather or not, connecting with providers who have community, they notice such a shift in the way that their patients are open with them, like their willingness to be open. Because if you think about this, if you walk into a room and you're like, okay, I got 5 minutes. I'm so exhausted. Like, I'm so bitter to be here, blah, blah, blah. And you're going to like exude that. Even if you're like, hi, how are you doing today, miss, blah, blah, blah. Like, you're still exuding that negative energy. So if you walk into that room, the patient's just going to be like, oh, like this person like doesn't care. Like, what's the point of telling them this or what's the point of telling them that? But if you're walking in and you have been fed, you've been kind of like filled yourself and you walk into that room, like really ready to connect with that patient, there's going to be such a tangible change. And we know when patients open up to us, when patients build rapport with us, they're way more likely to adhere or listen to our treatment plans. They're way more likely to come back when we ask them to come back, to get the labs we ask them to get, et cetera, et cetera. And so like that can just make such a huge difference in the actual, physiological impact on our patients.
Yeah. There was something that I read, I don't remember where, and I don't have the reference, so somebody on the internet can quote me, but like I remember reading that when patients feel that their provider listens to them, almost most of the issues, for the most part, kind of dry up because they just want to be heard. And so I take care of a population that they don't really get out a lot. They don't really, like a doctor's office visit is kind of the highlight of the day. And so sometimes what they just want to do is tell me about how they're doing. And they'll just kind of talk and I'll just kind of listen to them. Again, because my cup is full, right? I do I use the majority of my time to do the thing that fills me up and that I believe is my purpose, which is to take care of my kids. And so because I am doing that as my primary, as I listen to them, they're like, thanks for listening to me. I'm like, yeah. So you want me to write this medication for you? You know what? I don't really think it's that big of a deal. I probably don't need it. You know what? I think I probably am okay. I think I just need to come in here and talk to somebody. And I'm like, okay, are you sure? The script will be here if you need it. But if you don't need it, and they're like, no, I think I'm okay. And so honestly, they were actually finding in the study that just talking with the provider, meeting with the provider, having a conversation, feeling heard was a treatment in and of itself. Because there's a part of the patient that needs community. And you can't provide community to the patient if you're so empty because you're not getting filled up by your community, right? Like it's kind of this trickle down effect.
It is. And I mean, I also try to remind all of us of this. Sometimes we forget providers are patients. Literally every single one of us is a patient. And so it's like, if you just think about sometimes what you need when you go into it and just flip it, like don't think about yours as a provider in that moment. You're now a patient. What do you want? I want that person to listen to me of all the little things I've been thinking of for the last, few months worrying about my health. I just want you to listen to me and tell me like what you think. And so I think that like being able to flip that script and think about yourself in that perspective is important. And we're all experiencing a loneliness like epidemic, like we're all experiencing loneliness, lack of community. I mean, COVID exacerbated things, social media exacerbates things, like all of it, And so like, let's think about more ways to be connecting and building community.
So good. And I've enjoyed this conversation so much. I just feel like you're just such a great voice on this. I just think you're super balanced. I really like hearing your thoughts on it. Where can people find you? Where can people go like, I want to reach out. I want to hear what she's about. I want to join Togather. Like, where can they find you?
Yeah. So I am frequently on LinkedIn, posting every week, my thoughts on just about everything. Like I said, I don't know how to keep my mouth shut, so I have lots of thoughts. You can follow me on LinkedIn. And then for Togather, they can go to togathernow.com and I'll share the link with you. And that is the way to the community and kind of check out what we're about and see if you want to join us.
That sounds great. And I'll put the link in the show notes for those who are wanting to see her, reach out to her, and I will put everything in there, all your bio deets. And we always do like a rapid fire at the end. This is just, you can't prepare for it. It's coming at you. Are you ready?
All right. I'm ready for it. Let me get ready.
Get ready. Brush your shoulders out.
Yeah. Okay. Let's do this.
If you had to pick a character to play you on TV, who would you pick and why?
Or like an actor?
Yes. Or like just any like character. If you were like the character of, I don't know. I don't even know.
Oh my gosh.
Just like a character or an actor. Like this person's character is me or this actor.
I really like, actually, I like followed all of Grey's Anatomy. I don't know if you watch Grey's Anatomy.
Yes.
But I really like Miranda Bailey's like no nonsense. Like she's just like saying, but then she cares so deeply about all of her interns and stuff. And I'm like that. I want that energy. I want to be like, yeah, don't like mess with me, but also always here for the support.
I love that. Okay, yeah, I can see that. I can see that. And then throughout your life, what has been the best age to be that you were just like, this age was golden?
Oh, now. I really like now. Actually.
Oh, I'd like that.
Yeah.
I like that answer. Yeah. That's my favorite answer when people give me that. I like that one. And if you had to give a book for someone to read, what book would it be?
Oh my gosh, so many books. That's such a hard one.
I know, it's a hard one.
Okay, because of just my interest in my career and everything, I would probably do Radical Reproductive Justice by Loretta Ross.
Ooh.
Yes.
Ooh, that sounds
probably.
Sounds like a deep.
It's a deep dive. It's one that I like keep going back with the sticky notes and like, yes, thank you, yes. And then
very cool. Well, thank you for coming on the podcast today. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and your knowledge with our group and just seeing how cool nurse practitioners can make their careers look like and do and advocate for themselves and how you can continue to just metamorphosis yourself into something new. It's just so cool. We have the best degree. We just really do.
We do.
So
we do. You can, I truly believe we can do literally anything. So
I do as well. I do as well. So thanks so much. And again, guys, thank you for hanging out with us today. And as always, we're here to empower your journey. Thanks.
Thanks.